video editing, which is fun.
It's a good skill set to have.
Yeah. I'm not very good at it yet, but I can like fade in and fade out, which is pretty cool.
There you go. Can you do like a star? Like
like a wipe. Yeah.
Star wipe?
Checkerboard wipe.
I would prefer for all my intros to have a star wipe.
A star wipe? Okay. I think I can make that work. I have a list of notes from our last chat, and then I also I thought it'd be kind of fun just because to like ask you some really strange big picture questions.
I'm here for it.
Sweet. So the first question that I was thinking of, I just want to phrase it right so that it's not confusing. What percentage of the beliefs that you currently hold do you think are accurate?
Oh. I mean, that's tough. I mean, without like diving into like specific beliefs, I don't know.
If you had to guess?
I mean, I would like to think, in that, 75% range, 3/4. But yeah, I don't know. It's tough. Once you dive into stuff, it can be a little nuanced, I guess, where, I do think, in a few things there are both sides are right. And so there's not really like a clear cut answer. So, yeah.
What sorts of things do you think fit into that category of like both sides are right? Do you have like examples that you can think of?
Oh, I mean, it's a sticky subject. I mean, trans rights are probably the first thing that comes to mind. Is kind of where my head went to when I was thinking about that. Where it's like, I would say everyone deserves to be treated with respect, and like ultimately, like, who the fuck cares? Like, you do you. I think where I side a little bit on like, I'm obviously a liberal, but where I guess I would side with the other side a little bit on kind of at least my default position, because I haven't done enough research into any of this. Would be like in athletic sports, right? Where I think there is, a physiological difference between men and women from a physical standpoint. And that's why, if you look at like, the men's fastest 100-meter dash and the women's, like the men's are always faster. And that has been true like since we started recording this stuff, and that's just why we've always done it that way, to make competition fair. Right? And so when you start getting into like, all right, you have a trans person, who should they compete against? Should they be able to compete? All that, it does raise some questions. And I can remember like, an NPR story where I think it was the Olympics, but I could be mistaken. Back, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, instituted like a testosterone test, blood test, to like, qualify or whatever. And, women who were born female failed the test because they just had natural levels of testosterone higher than, what the threshold was set at. And they were like, well, this isn't fair. And so even like that kind of test doesn't seem to, fully grasp whatever. And so, yeah, it's a tough subject, and I don't know the answer. But I do kind of get where the other side is coming from of like, is this fair anymore? And yeah, I don't know the answer.
Oh, that's a great example. I don't know if that's and that we could certainly dig into that claim if you wanted.
I mean,
I don't
have any answers on that subject. I mean, I'm halfway between where it's just like, yeah.
Does it?
I mean, my default stance is like, who cares what anyone how they want to be. If that's what makes them feel right,
Yeah.
more power to you. But
Sure.
when you start getting to the competition level and the professional level, like, yeah, it does raise some questions, and I don't think there's an easy answer.
Is there another example of something like that where you're like right in the middle too, or not right in the middle? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that you're like, there's too much nuance. There's right answers on both sides.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I mean, top of mind, it's hard. I mean, you could say abortion, where I think where do you draw the line of where does a fetus become a human? It's probably not a day before they're born, and it's probably not the day after conception in my mind, and so there's some point in there, but where do you draw that tipping point of exactly how many days? Again, both of these are very sticky subjects, but that's probably a little bit to the point of where there's maybe not a clear-cut answer, at least in my mind. I know people would certainly argue with that, who are a lot more convicted in some of these, but
well, that might be another interesting one to dig into too. I'm just going to put these down as possibilities. Are you desirous of, do you want to believe things that are true?
Yeah, in general, I would kind of agree with that statement.
Is it important for you? Like, do you value that, believing true things?
Yeah, I mean, I would say yes. I think there's understanding what truth is, and then kind of you can decide for yourself what to do with that. But I think it is important to at least come to a baseline. And that's maybe something that's getting lost a little bit in the modern world. But yeah, I guess I've always found it interesting that the whole world has agreed on days of the week, right? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? Everyone agrees that on what day is Monday, what day is Tuesday. There's really no debate about that. And that I just find to be interesting, that like the whole world is on board with that. Like, this is truth. This is, today is Thursday, right? And so there is like a level of baseline that I think is important. Now, where you go from that, daylight savings time, all that shit, like, you add complexity, you add nuance to it all, but it is important to have kind of that baseline truth level, and I think that's important for common understanding.
Yeah. How do you define truth?
Yeah, I guess it would be, objective and repeatable, observable from multiple people, without necessarily influence or bias from another party. I think truth should be something that everyone can kind of come to the same conclusion. Essentially, the scientific method, right? Observable, repeatable observations.
Okay. Yeah. I'm biased a little bit. I'm tempted to right when we left off our last talk, you said something about how it takes faith to believe in a God. And so I wanted to get back to that and ask you about that in particular, but maybe one question just right before that I was thinking of that I should have asked you last time. If a God didn't exist, would you want to know that?
Yeah, I would say yes. I mean, I would say knowing is better than not knowing.
Hmm.
Generally speaking.
Hmm. Are you desirous of, I don't know why I keep using that word. Do you want a God to exist? Is there a part of you that is desirous of that?
Oh, that's tough. I guess where my mind goes to is, would it be better if God existed or not? Um, and probably. That's tough. Because you could argue throughout human history where people are really arguing for one God or another. It hasn't worked out so great. Um, but like, end all be all, like truth, God is real. It's probably better. It's probably
Okay.
an asshole, but you know.
What is it about the being, how define better for me? How do you think?
Um, I don't know. Like, there's there's maybe something in, like, I don't know, there being more, or I don't know. I mean, I guess, I don't really believe in heaven, but if, let's say, like, Christianity was real and there was, heaven, hell, all that kind of stuff. Would it be nice if there was a heaven? Absolutely. That sounds great, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess the notion of there being something bigger and greater to everything is, maybe it might be comforting in a way. Yeah, I don't know if it would be better or worse. If you could definitely say, like, God is real or not. If you could say not, and all we have is this moment, maybe that would be better.
Hmm.
I guess it's hard to say. There's two sides of the coin, I guess, and both pros and cons to each. Um, I don't buy into, like, this idea that some super Christians have, that, like, we get our morality from God, and
Hmm.
the world would just be a shit show if there was no God and all that. Like, I don't think that's true. Um, I think people would still strive to be, like, decent human beings for the sake
Hmm.
of one another. Like, empathy is something that most of us are, you know, ingrained with, born with. Um, I don't think that goes away if you don't have a God. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think I understand you. What just as like a brief recap, I think last time you said you're somewhere in the 60 to 70% confidence range. Um, and when you think about what a god is, it's more like a creator god, um, sort of. Don't let me put words in your mouth. I'm just trying to recount what I think I remember you telling me.
yeah.
Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah. I mean, I think there is, a pretty, I don't know, spectacular kind of beauty in the world and in the way things work. And I don't rule out that could happen, by chance. And just kind of the way all things kind of have to work together. When you get down to, like, the atomic level, right? But there is something particularly beautiful about it that just, I don't know, it kind of gives a feeling of something more.
Hmm. Are there um are there things that aren't beautiful in your mind?
Are there things that aren't beautiful?
Yeah. Like, what's the opposite of beautiful?
I don't know. I guess like where my mind goes to in terms of like a natural beauty, is the golden ratio, Fibonacci sequence,
Hmm.
kind of all of these. There's so many like naturally reoccurring things, like I don't know, even just the way math works. When you get into like abstract algebra.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it just there is like a almost a perfection to it that is, I don't know, a
What
little awe-inspiring, I guess. And so I guess like from that, like the opposite of beauty, like the imperfection. I don't know where my mind would go initially on kind of that
hmm.
statement. Um,
Is this like is this your perception of this beauty? Is this one of the things that lends itself to your confidence?
um, it's tough. Again, like it's a little bit like you see things like the way that like um, kind of leaves and like the veins and leaves work, and you compare that to like the human lungs, and they look almost identical if you compare pictures of them like under a microscope kind of thing, and like there's something very cool about that. Now the flip side of that is you can argue like, yeah, that's the way it kind of has to work, um, or at least like the way that things have naturally evolved. Like that's just how we take in oxygen and
Mm.
breathe out carbon dioxide and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, so I
Maybe.
guess yeah, maybe I don't know.
Maybe.
It's hard to pin down. I wouldn't say I build confidence necessarily off of some of those more specifics. Um, but I think it all kind of builds together into something greater. Um, and ultimately, like, I'm not the best example of like a Christian true believer who has this, 100% sure defined belief in God where nothing can shake me. I'm probably not the best, I'm definitely not the best like Christian spokesman by any means, or belief in God, because I think there is a lot of gray area in there. I just lean to one side rather than the other.
Hmm. Yeah, last time, right at the end of our talk, I think we were sort of in this similar spot, and you mentioned a leap of faith, or that you needed faith to get you there. And I was wondering what do you mean by faith? What do you mean when you use that word?
Yeah. So I think since we last spoke, which was like before the holidays, we were watching some Christmas movies, and we were watching a Miracle on 34th Street, which I don't know if you've ever seen that, but there's a line at the end of it, where the mom has kind of come around to the idea of Santa Claus and all this magic and all this, and her daughter she's raised to be um, very practical. And her daughter is like kind of set on not believing now because things haven't quite worked out. And she says to her daughter, and I'm probably butchering the line, but um, you know, faith is believing in something even when common sense tells you not to.
Hmm.
And that kind of stuck with me a little bit. And I was like, yeah, kind of. It's believing in something with the absence of definitive proof.
Hmm.
Um, and we take, we all use faith a lot in our lives. And we have varying degrees of proof that kind of reassure us. But um,
So would you it correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're saying faith is when you use faith it's closer to trust, or like you could use trust almost as a synonym for it, Or is it something different?
I don't know if I'd use trust. So I think there's kind of two definitions of faith, right? And one being, I have faith that this person will come through for me, let's say. And that is based on like previous experience. I have faith that this person will continue to, come through for me and do whatever. Like, and that is almost based on like prior experience. That's kind of a different definition of the word, where I would relate that more to trust. I trust that this person will come through for me because I know they have in the past, kind of a thing.
So where, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, when I say kind of it takes faith to believe in God, I'm kind of saying like it takes like a little bit of that absence of prior established everything, that I'm here, belief in God is over here, and there's nothing really bridging the two other than just saying, I'm gonna take this leap and I'm gonna make it over here to believe here. And I don't know if that makes sense. Like,
yeah,
it isn't a vacuum and absence of something to bridge that gap. And that's where my definition of like faith in terms of like a spiritual sense, I think would come into play.
Yeah. I'm wondering. Can somebody use the faith that you're describing in this like chasm jumping way to come to conclusions that aren't true?
Oh, absolutely. And that's where it's a dangerous thing. I mean, I think that's where like conspiracy theories and kind of all this really take root. And I think that's probably why you see, well, I'm speaking off the cuff. I don't know any of this definitively. I would bet that probably Christians are probably more of the like QAnon base and like conspiracy theorists, because they kind of know how to make that leap. Like, I've got a couple of points that may or may not be true, may or may not be definitive proof, but if I connect the dots here and I take a hop, skip, and a jump and I just believe in them, then all of this makes sense. And so I guess I would argue that, Christianity, religion, I'm using Christianity in general just because, the culture that we live in as the predominant religion, but it almost kind of trains you to make those leaps, which I think can be a very dangerous thing, right? You've done it before, you can do it again, and I enjoy delving into these conspiracy theories, kind of tracking like what like QAnon and some of these other like crazy bullshit things are saying, because I find it very interesting to see like, and I can see where they're getting to, but when you take a step back, like, it does take a lot of belief to get to the end point that they're at. But there are like some points along the way that connect these dots. I just think in general, like logic, common sense, Occam's razor would kind of snap these a little bit.
Yeah. When we talked last, I think the two sort of main reasons that you gave for your 60 to 70% confidence was like the feeling, and the sort of like cultural idea passed through time. This,
Yeah.
when you talk about this, the faith that you're using here, is that one of those reasons? Is that one of the things that gets you to the 60 to 70%?
Well, I'd say, faith kind of connects a little bit of the feeling to the end belief, right? So kind of much like I'm talking about with like conspiracy theories, where like you have your starting point of, let's call it truth, the world that we live in, and then you have an end point of something grand that like logic and whatever is not going to get you to. Um, to me, like a little bit of that feeling, a little bit of that like observed beauty in kind of the perfection of the way everything works is a little bit of that hop, skip, and a jump, that dot that connects the points, that gets me to that end point. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't love the analogy of using conspiracy theories for connecting God, but it's not totally unrelated. You could call God a conspiracy theory, right? I don't think that's too far of a stretch.
Interesting. Yeah, if faith as this sort of method in the way that you're describing it can lead people to incorrect conclusions, how does that make you feel about the reliability of this method?
Oh, it's not reliable.
Oh.
Yeah, so I mean that's where I have a big problem with, like, I don't know, evangelicalism, like raising kids in, I guess how I was raised. In, I went to private schools for most of my, secondary life, elementary and secondary, and just ingrained that this is like truth. I think that's dangerous. I think you have to acknowledge that, hey, this is like what we believe, but there's a lot of problems with this. And I think where you break that is, showing the steps along the way where kind of the logical fallacy kind of lies, right? So in conspiracy theories, you can kind of go through and say, I don't have a particular conspiracy theory in mind. We could certainly probably come up with one as an example, but somewhere along the way, either logic or, I mean, often for me, it's just Occam's razor. Like, is the government like super smart and a shadow government and working towards like a new world order, and everyone is controlling things behind the scene, and they're working towards like a new world currency, and they're going to shut off every dissenter's like bank account and all this crap? Or are they just like bumbling idiots who are like barely getting by and can barely keep the lights on in their own building? My experience from interacting with people like this is that they're probably like barely getting by and pretty much idiots. So the simplest solution here is that there is no grand master plan. There are different ideas at play, and it's just kind of a mess, and people are working through it the best they can, right? The simplest solution is just people are idiots.
That's interesting.
And so
do you apply that sort of same methodology when it comes to the God belief? And if you do, like, can you walk me through it, like how you think about it?
Well, I mean, one, like, I have a huge problem with organized religion. I mean, organized religion is a Ponzi scheme. It's just a way to take money from poor people, and control them and whatever. I mean, the whole reason for, like, I mean, this is a rabbit hole.
We can edit the whole reason any of this out if you.
No, I don't even care. I mean, the whole reason for like no adultery and like marriage rights and all of that back in the day is because you couldn't do paternity tests back in 80 times. So you had to, in order to like establish lineage, like you had to have faithful spouses and stuff like that. And not that it worked that well, but it was a method of control, as well, a method of like systematic, like whatever. it is what it is. That's why those rules existed. That's why, like, the Bible gives a recipe for an abortion if you think that your wife has been unfaithful. All of this, like, and so, I think, kind of coming back to where we started, I think when you apply this kind of same ideology to religion and to God, to the belief structure of God, I think for me, what it would take is more definitive proof in why there is kind of this feeling in so many people throughout time, like whether that's I floated like the crazy made up theory that I have of like, hey, we're sharing electrons, like our electrons are probably in our body, in our atoms, things like that, but that's the most likely location. They could be anywhere, which means we could be sharing them with anything, which means that could be like part of the connection, I guess, that we feel with this spirituality is somehow like, for whatever reason, at times we are sharing like electrons with something else, with someone else, with anything, right? And that is maybe causing some reaction within us that is making us feel some sort of like spiritual connectedness, right? If there was like definitive proof of that, that would get me one step closer to saying, well, no, God is not real. There is like a scientific explanation, proof of why this phenomenon exists. Right? And so every kind of step along the way, I think that you can make to definitively proving like, no, then I think you get there. Right. But
yeah, I think I understand. This is like a marker for you of something that would lower your confidence. This idea of like, you could show that we're sharing electrons with people all over the planet, that might help. Is it so?
Yeah,
It's
a bullshit theory, right? But it's just like.
But this is So you're thinking about this is part of the like feelings thing, right?
Right. So like, I have this feeling, other people have this feeling. Why is it like a common reoccurring thing? Through separated cultures, through time. Like, why does this keep occurring? And so what is the explanation of that? Beyond just like a desire to believe in something greater.
Sure. Yeah. When you think about that, how much of that do you think that is the desire part, and how much do you think is something else?
I think there's definitely a desire element. I think people latch on to the idea of heaven because they want to see their loved ones again. Yeah, that would be great to see everyone that you lost again, and everyone's perfect, and life is great, and whatever. So I think there's definitely like a desire element to that, but I don't know. For me, that's not really a thing, and so
right.
I guess why am I still on this, other than just having been raised this way and maybe a piece of me kind of ingrained in this?
Do you think that is a part of it, or a large part?
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. I think there are probably some definitive, like, I don't know, established as a child, kind of, it's just hard to shake. Some of your like early upbringing. I think there is like a piece that's ingrained. Sorry, can I run to the bathroom real quick?
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Too much coffee. I'm on my second pot for the day. So
shit, second pot. I was feeling bad. I was feeling bad for 3 cups yesterday. You're in your second pot.
No, I'm like, whatever, 24 cups a day, if you measure by the coffee pot standards.
I think those are the right standards.
How I live.
Okay, feelings. The reliability of feelings. How I I think last time we spoke, I think you said something like 3 out of 5 stars is what you would rate feelings. Is that pretty accurate still?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I would say, feelings are unreliable, but I think they are getting at something. And so we're, you know,
Hmm. Yeah, because I'm wondering, like, if you say, like, I'm using, I'm part of my confidence is I'm using feelings to come to 60 to 70%. And
yeah,
then I'm thinking we have Alex over here who's like, well, I'm using feelings to come to 60, 70% confidence in the opposite of your belief in
mhm,
that there is no, I'm 60 to 70% confident that there is no God is what Alex says. And he
yeah,
goes, part of the reason that is how my feelings about it. Um, and if say I didn't know anything about the topic at all, and I was trying to figure out what's true, and I have you and Alex, what what can I do to be able to tell if one of you is more accurate or not, just with the feelings thing?
yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's a good answer to that. I don't know that you can. I think it would be very difficult to discern truth from feelings. Um, because I could argue, hey, like, look at XYZ, and like, don't you see like how perfect this is? Like, and Alex could be like, this does nothing for me. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, whatever. It's the way it works.
Hmm.
Where I just have, in my mind, a different appreciation, and Alex is saying, yeah, but that doesn't mean anything. I don't know how between those two kind of points of reference you would discern truth one way or another. Um,
Yeah.
it's very much a difference of opinion where I think you're not getting. I would say Alex probably is more on his side of argument of there not being a God than me on the side of saying there is.
Using
And
feelings?
well, I mean, I think once you get outside of feelings, you start going into, evidence, proof, whatever.
Hmm.
And, I think the argument would lean towards the side of there not being a God, right? You have to take faith, you have to take feelings and faith to get you to the point of saying, yes, God.
Hmm.
There is no, as far as I know, nothing that would definitively show someone that there is God outside of using feelings and that leap of faith.
Hmm.
I don't
Yeah.
think I could convince anyone that there was a God, like based on facts, evidence, argument. I don't think I certainly couldn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is why I'm not a great like Christian spokesman, because I can't convince anybody. I got nothing for you, man. I got no proof.
No, yeah, I just part of the reason that I take try to do these conversations is because I personally value truth really highly. So like I
Yeah,
want if a God does exist, I want to know it. Um but it seems like at least from your perspective, feelings aren't a reliable way to get to the truth of it. The beauty, this idea of beauty isn't a very reliable way to get to it. Um so I'm just wondering like what like I'm sure I asked you this last time, but is there like and you basically just answered this question, but if there's no test that we can perform, what is like a good methodology to get to this belief or to figure out whether or not this belief is true? And is there one, you know?
I mean, I think when it comes to God, I think that's maybe one of the reasons why it has persisted throughout time, right? Is because it's not an answerable question.
Yeah,
You can say no and I can say yes, and no one can ever be proven right or wrong. At least to date, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I asked you this question last time too, but just so I know, to help me understand, can you think about is there another belief that you hold, and you don't have to tell me what it is, but that you hold for the same reasons as this God belief, or at least up to like a 60 to 70% confidence?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of other things that like I just believe, but don't really have any like necessarily proof for. And I'm sure there are some. I just can't really think of any off the top of my head. I mean, there are things that like I don't believe in that I'm open to, like aliens. Like I don't know that I necessarily believe in aliens. Maybe out there, but like I don't know, like little green men abducting people in New Mexico. Probably not. But the universe is big. Probability says it could happen.
Do you get anything out of holding this belief? Like, does it do something for you? Does it make you happier? Do you feel like it gives you purpose? Is there any benefit that you derive from it?
No. I would say neither positive or negative. I don't get anything necessarily beneficial out of it, and I also don't like hold myself feeling guilty for, I don't know, being a sinner or whatever. But again, this is where I'm not a very good Christian, because I'm kind of like, I don't really care if Jesus was the Son of God. It doesn't really change anything for me. And if all of Christianity is true, that probably means I'm going to hell, because it's kind of modern day Christianity, at least. Like, believe God or believe Jesus is your savior and ask him to wash away all your sins. And I'm kind of like, you do.
Yeah, if you no longer held this belief, would your life change in any way? Would you behave differently?
No, and I think that's where I said a little bit differently than I guess most Christians kind of believe, because I believe that it fundamentally shouldn't change the way that you behave and the way you live your life, and that's kind of the problem, and I guess that's maybe like the crux of where my particular belief set lies. Is it doesn't matter whether Jesus Christ was God incarnate, deity. It doesn't matter if he was just some crazy dude spouting nonsense. Like, he had a lot of good ideas. It's a good model to live your life after. You should strive for all of that. And I think most people wouldn't necessarily argue with that. Like, it's a good set of core beliefs, like love God, yes or no, but love your neighbor. Like, treat other people with respect, treat other people with kindness. Like, this whole like established religion for money, like that's all bullshit. All these rules, that's all bullshit. Like, just love each other, like hang out with prostitutes, and just show kindness to people, like help people who are hurting. And like, that's a good model to live your life after.
I think so too.
And if it matters to you whether or not like he was just some crazy dude or the Son of God, whether or not you actually follow that like core principle, to me, like, doesn't make a difference. So yeah, I guess that's where I'm not a good example because to me, like that is the crux of my belief is it shouldn't matter. And so it wouldn't change the way I live my life one way or another, whether this is true or not. I believe that to be a good model to at least strive towards. But
I gotta tell you, this is pretty fascinating for me, especially because of your answer to the question of if you held any other beliefs in the same confidence realm. Like, it seems to me, all things being equal, you would prefer to have evidence, but it sounds to me like you're saying there's no way to get that. But would you prefer to have, I think you said that.
Yeah, for sure. I would prefer to have evidence. I guess, on one side or the other, you have to take a little bit of a leap of faith, right?
Can you elaborate?
I mean, whether or not you believe in God, right? Like, there is no definitive proof for God existing. And so you can take that and say, I have no proof, so therefore I don't believe. Or you can say, I do believe, and I'm going to take that leap of faith. But there is a slight bit of faith, I would say, that is required on the side of saying, I think roughly, let's say, half the planet is wrong. Whether you're Muslim, Christian, whatever, that believes in a higher power. You do have to believe that, like, what is it, 4 billion people on the planet are wrong. And so I think there is a element of faith that has to come into play there.
Yeah, what is it about, like, because I'm wondering now about things that other large portions of the population believe that aren't the God thing.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of people who believe it for whatever reason, and then there are other people who don't. And is there something about the God thing that you think is like more important, so that people that, like, because you're saying that, like, it takes a little bit of faith to say, a large portion of the population of the world is wrong about this. I'm wondering, is there anything about the number of people that makes it more true?
I don't know that you can define truth by majority opinion, right?
Yeah.
Although I like when you start getting into morality, right? I do think morality is relative. And so you roughly get to morality by majority opinion, which is an interesting, I guess, I don't know, not a one-to-one, but.
Yeah. Like, I'm wondering if, I think you said 50%. Let's go even higher. Let's say like 80%. If like 80% of the population believed that Santa Claus was real, we could just, it doesn't matter what time period, but we'll just say that's the case as a hypothetical. Are the people that don't believe that Santa is real taking a leap of faith to come to that conclusion? Or are they taking any faith? Like, what's the difference between these two examples of, like...
No, Santa Claus and God are a great comparison point, right? And yeah, it's hard to say because, like, I don't know, I'm not exactly sure how to define it, but I guess I do put weight in majority opinion, let's say. For the same reason that I put weight, I mean, not to, get political or whatever, in like vaccines, right? If 99 scientists say, get vaccinated, this vaccine is safe, do whatever, and one says, no, I think I've got proof to the contrary. Like, yes, you should hear that person out, but I do put weight in the 99 to the 1.
Yeah. Why do you put weight in the scientist's conclusions?
Well, let's say they're both scientists. Like, both groups are, let's say, well-renowned, respected scientists, right? But you got 99 on one side and 1 on the other.
Yeah.
There is something about that majority conclusion, even if, like,
what is it about?
Let's say it's something that, I mean, even with vaccines or medicine, I think medicine is probably the easiest example of something that someone can put an explanation forth and it sounds reasonable. I don't fully understand it because it's not in the scope of things that I understand. You know, I have never studied medicine. I have a vague understanding of chemistry and and biology and how things work, but I can't argue with them if they put forth a definitive or a reasonable case for their side, and the same is true with the other side, right? So if I'm left with two sides who sound reasonably articulate as to their case, as to why they believe one thing or another, and me not being a doctor, we can't really decide between the two, right? I can Google to my heart's content and find evidence for both cases or disproving both cases. So now I'm left with, well, now how do I decide who's right?
Sure. So you're saying the larger group of people who have all come to this conclusion is
right.
Probably
if I'm a betting man, if I got to put money down, who am I going to put money down with?
Yeah.
Right. I'm gonna bet with the 99, and I might be wrong, but if I continue to bet with the 99, the majority of the time, probability says that I will be right, and there's something beautiful about probability and the way it all works out. So
what is it?
That's where I'm gonna lie.
Yeah, what is it about the scientists in general? And we can use both sides, 99-1 or whatever. What is it about them that causes you to have confidence in that what they're saying is correct?
I mean, because in general, there are people who have studied this and know much more about this than I do, have essentially devoted their lives to understanding this particular subject. And generally, while I do think people are assholes, it's a little bit of like, are people good or bad? And I don't have an answer to that, but I do think, like, at least in my mind, the scientific community, I think, wants to do good and strives for its knowledge and is not trying to just, like, bullshit people.
Yeah.
And so I guess I put them forward as an example of they might get it wrong sometimes, but they're trying to get it right. And yeah, I'm gonna bet with that group.
If we just use as this example as like a sort of like holding point or like a the 99 and the 1, what's your confidence that the 99 scientists are right and the 1 is wrong? Just as a hypothetical.
Yeah, I mean, we can make it easy, 99 to 1, right?
Perfect.
There's always a chance, and that 1% is a 1% for a reason.
That's great.
Right?
Yeah, and you said that the reason that you are able to develop confidence in either group, both groups of scientists, is that typically these are people that have spent years of their life studying this thing. Generally, you think people aren't evil. So there's this sort of data background as well as like your trust in people. Is there something comparable like that in the God belief for you?
I mean, it's a little hard because no matter what, you have to take that leap of faith to get to God, right? You have people on the God side who have spent their whole lives, you know, in a monastery studying scripture, studying historical events, whatever. Still, no matter how perfect their argument is, you're still a hop, skip, and a jump away from, yes, definitively there is a God. Mm-hmm. Whereas, even with scientists, like, I mean, that's the beauty of science is even if they're wrong, at some point you're going to be able to figure out why they were wrong. Mm. And I just don't think that's necessarily true for God and for kind of faith. And that's it's tough because there is this gap, right? I've talked about like if we came up with like evidence for why people feel this way, that would get me a lot closer to saying, okay, there is no God. The way that I feel is because of X, Y, Z. There's always this gap. And so you might be able to get me to a point of there is no God. I don't think you're ever going to get society as a whole to the point of there is no God, because there will always be this gap that faith is bridging.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think that is? Is that like when you think about that, does it seem like a personality thing, or like maybe like because of your confidence level, it's more tied to like an actual thing that we don't know about? Or do you think it's more cultural? Like, why do you think that is?
I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of things that I don't understand that I take for granted, right? And someone smarter than me could explain it. I'm never the smartest guy in any room, and it's very dangerous if you ever think that you are. Never trust the guy who thinks he's the smartest one in the room. And that's one lesson I learned in life, because they're always full of shit. So, I mean, I understand what electricity is. Mm-hmm. I understand how computers work. I don't really understand how circuits, like, in a computer work. I get the concept, but mm-hmm. I couldn't tell you exactly why or how, mm-hmm. Why or how the lights come on. There are a lot of things in life that I do not understand that someone out there maybe does have the knowledge on how to do this. And I guess that's where a little bit of like, you related to God and faith is, maybe someone out there doesn't actually have the answers, but, maybe there, in theory, is a theoretical explanation, or there's a theoretical person out there who can explain it all.
Yeah.
And so I guess, I just leave myself open to like accepting things are true that I don't necessarily fully comprehend, because I do that a lot in life, mm-hmm. in other things. And so I guess this area is not entirely different to me to accept something that I don't fully understand.
Sure. Yeah, unfortunately, I think I understand you.
I mean, it's hard to like argue with somebody who's like, yeah, I don't get it, but it's fine. It is.
Well, and I don't want to argue.
No. I didn't mean to argue, but yeah, it's tough to be on the other side of this, because I'm like, yeah, I don't know, I don't get it, but
yeah,
I'm not changing my belief. So.
All right. Well, you did say that you have markers that you could see that would adjust your confidence. So that at least, I like that. I think that's a good quality to have about one's beliefs. I think it's important to think about what could change your mind,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a scary thing when anyone is 100% sure of anything.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you think of this session? Did you have any questions for me? Did you like it?
I don't think I have any questions. No, I mean, it was an interesting conversation. Definitely, kind of got me puzzling in, areas that, I haven't really tried to articulate before. So
cool.
yeah, definitely interesting.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sitting down and taking the time.